It's day 24. It's also May 29th, 2019, and we are in Shelton, Washington. You ever wake up in the morning and ask yourself, what am I doing? And more importantly, why? Yeah, me too. Hi, my name's Craig, and this is my story. A story about life out there. For visuals while listening, search Life Out There on your favorite social media platform or use the links in the podcast description. For the first time since leaving Tacoma, I actually feel like I'm leaving home again. So with home in the rear view, our next stop would be just 38 miles up the road in Shelton. Shelton was an impromptu stop, and I'd soon learn that, impromptu stops, they would sort of become our thing. So we left Bremerton on Highway 3, the plan being to take the back roads, enjoy a little more of the peninsula before hitting 101 South. I had made plans to visit family in Colorado next and definitely planned on enjoying the scenery all along the way. Now, two things happened as I drove through the small town of Allen and into Shelton. First, I saw the sign that read, Shelton, home of the evergreen forest. Next to it was a sign welcoming me to Christmastown, USA? I thought. And the next sign I would read, Little Creek Casino ahead. Done. Next stop, Shelton. Casinos have RV parking, and I have a lot of curiosity and a camera. Perfect match. Checking in at the Little Creek Casino, I was handed my 24-hour parking pass in the RV park, along with a hotel key granting me access to all the hotel amenities. I kinda instantly saw a dip in the pool and some quality hot tub time in my future. But first, out to grab the boys for a long walk around the casino area, then finish setting up camp and settle in. A quick Bing search would instantly return 4 interesting results. First, Shelton has a council-manager form of government and was the last city in Washington to use a mayor-commission form of government. I had no idea what that even meant. And why would a search about Shelton think that was important? There's some learning to be done there. Next, the town's economy was built around logging, farming, dairying, ranching, as well as oyster cultivation? Yep, more reading. Third, the Simpson Timber Company mill on Puget Sound's Oakland Bay dominated not only the town's economy, but the landscape of the downtown area as a whole. Now, that was interesting because I remembered that as I drove through the town on the way to the casino, I had indeed seen the mill. I've seen mills in small towns all over the country. What I had not seen yet is a mill smack dab in the middle of a town. Shelton apparently grew up around this mill, and it's obvious that city planners over the years clearly wanted to maintain the mill in the heart of the town's growth. And more reading. And finally, some quick reading around this Christmastown, USA thing, and a entry into the Guinness Book World of Records. Yep, needed to read about that. So now I had a plan. With the boys settled in after their walk, Dad would hit the pool, the hot tub, and then the bar. Ordered up a bacon cheeseburger from the Island Grill on my way back to the RV. While waiting for the burger at the bar, the bartender asked if I'd like a drink. I told him I'd love a whiskey sour, but no time. Just gonna grab my burger and head back to the RV. Staying in the RV park, Paul asked. Yup. No problem, he said. Can I have a peek at that RV pass? 5 minutes later, I left the Island Grill with a pretty awesome bacon cheeseburger and an even better whiskey sour in a to-go cup. Thanks, Paul. You rock. And with the belly full, one last run around the park with the boys, it was time to settle in for an evening of all things Shelton. And here we go. Shelton is a city in and the county seat of Mason County, Washington. It's also the westernmost city on the Puget Sound. Population, just over 10,000. Shelton was officially incorporated in 1890 and was named after David Shelton. David and his wife, Frances Shelton, each took a claim of land enabled by the Donation Land Claim Act, totaling 640 acres in what would eventually be incorporated as Shelton. They established a farm at the head of Oakland Bay in 1853. David Shelton would later go on to become a delegate in the territorial legislature. Territorial legislature, I wondered. I'd learned that a territorial legislature is a type of legislative body that operates in a territory, which is a subdivision of a country, and for the U.S. at this time, a body that was responsible for making laws in areas that were not yet within the boundaries of existing states. It goes on and becomes a lot more complicated, because the federal government is involved. But at least I had the gist of it. In general, even though the territory may operate outside existing states, they were, for the most part, bound by federal precedent. The area that would become Shelton was originally called Coda. Coda was inhabited by the Squaxin Island tribe, or People of the Waters. The People of the Waters had lived in the area for centuries before contact with white settlers. I'm sensing a pattern here. The land was part of 4,000 square miles, ceded in the Treaty of Medicine Creek in December of 1864. And even before its incorporation, Shelton was added to the Mosquito Fleet's route in 1886, when a stern wheeler named Willie began operation between Olympia and Shelton. So now, digging into that first thing I read. Shelton has a council member form of government and was the last city in Washington to use a mayor-commission form of government. A council manager form of government, after reading through, well, this turns out to be the most common form of government in the U.S. In areas with a population of 2,500 or more, a council manager form of government is a system where an elected council, including a mayor, makes legislative decisions. They appoint a professional city manager to carry out administrative tasks, implement the council's policies, and oversee day-to-day operations. The city manager is accountable to the council and can be dismissed by them at any time. Next, Shelton was the last city in Washington to use a mayor-commission form of government. Whew. I'm not going to lie, it was around this point I was wondering whether or not I should have even had that whiskey sour. Or maybe I should just go get another one. Anyway, a mayor-commission form of government is a system where voters elect a commission, including a mayor. This commission performs both legislative and executive functions, but with each commissioner overseeing a specific department of the city. The mayor typically serves as the chair of the commission. That part was interesting to me because I had also read that in this form of government, the mayor was essentially nothing more than a figurehead. Okay, too confusing. So I'm not going to lie. I went and got that second whiskey sour. And now I'm back in the game. Okay, I understand the fundamental differences here. Commissioners having responsibility over different departments in the government versus hiring a professional city planner. But anyway, my real questions were around why the oldest form of government in the U.S., which is mayor commission, why did it go away? So, I had to ask, is the mayor commission form of government still utilized in the U.S.? I got the following results. Yes, the mayor commission form of government is still utilized in the United States, but it's not very common. It's the oldest form of government in the U.S., but today it exists in less than 1% of cities. One city that operates under this form of government is Portland, Oregon. Okay, more thoughts. If it went away for the most part, but is still utilized by a major metropolitan area like Portland, Oregon, why? So then I asked the following. Why did the mayor commission form of government fail in the U.S.? Number one, lack of expertise. Commissioners were often responsible for areas where they had little or no expertise, and this could lead to inefficiencies and poor decision-making, so go figure. Number two, inefficiency and corruption. The system was vulnerable to corruption and inefficiency. An entrenched city council could consistently block the mayor's initiatives. I guess that kind of goes back to the whole mayor as a figurehead thing, which was number 3 on the list, lack of central leadership. The mayor's role was largely ceremonial and with no additional powers over the other commissioners, which led to a lack of central leadership and coordination. Just a bunch of people butting heads all the time, I guess. And last on the list, shift to a professional management system. Many cities switched to the council manager form of government, which separates legislative and executive functions and involves a professional manager overseeing the day-to-day operations. Okay, so that all makes sense. But I was still curious, what's up, Portland? So yep, I binged it. There's naturally a very long, drawn-out explanation, but in summary, what I took away from it was, because it works for them. The city adopted this form of government in 1913 and at the time was considered progressive for doing so. While the system failed, for all the reasons I just read, around the country it continued to work for Portland. The voters in the area have, through their voice, maintained this system and apparently stand by it. But with that said, I will say I've read where ballot initiatives coming up in upcoming elections are kind of hinting that there may be a turnaround in store, but we'll see. Enough about that. And, note to self, any future web searches that return a result around how a place has been governed, I'm skipping it. Next up, the town's economy was built around logging, farming, dairying, ranching, as well as oyster cultivation. Oyster cultivation, also known as oyster farming, is an aquaculture practice where oysters are bred and raised mainly for their pearls, shells, and edible inner organ tissue. This practice dates back to the 1st century BC and requires careful planning and attention to detail, including species selection, life cycle management, and maintaining optimal water quality. There are various cultivation techniques, but the top 2 seem to boil down to, number 1, bottom culture. Oysters are grown directly on the seafloor. And number 2, the rack and bag system, in which oysters are kept in mesh bags on metal racks near the shoreline. This choice of techniques is basically up to the individual farmers in the areas that they live in. So the question for me was, with the highest oyster production in the U.S. being in the Gulf Coast and the Chesapeake Bay regions, how does Shelton, Washington figure in? Oh, and fun fact, Alabama, in spite of having only 60 miles of coastline, is a major player in the oyster game. And yep, I just used the words oyster and game in the same sentence. Anyway, number 3 on that list of oyster-producing regions in the U.S., the West Coast. That's a pretty broad term until you realize that nearly all of the West Coast oyster production happens in the Puget Sound region with over 300 farms. In fact, Willapa Bay at the north end of the sound produces more oysters than any other estuary in the U.S. Shelton is a significant player in the oyster game. There, did it again. Where was I? Shelton is a significant player in the oyster farming industry because of its location on Oakland Bay and because it's home to a company called Taylor Shellfish Farms, one of the largest producers of farm shellfish in the U.S. Oysters. Next up, lumber. Lumber is big and always has been nearly everywhere in the Pacific Northwest. But unlike the eastern Puget Sound, where old-growth timber harvesting began almost immediately following non-native settlement, Shelton's timber remained relatively untouched for decades. But that would all change when the Simpson Logging Company began operation of its first sawmill, the Reed Mill, in 1925. The company was founded 35 years prior by Saul Simpson and was already a major player in the industry. With the addition of the Reed Mill, Simpson Logging would go on to innovate the industry and be a key player in the development of forest products throughout the Pacific Northwest. One of the company's most notable achievements was the installation, operation, and maintenance of an extensive network of 80 miles of track used to haul lumber out of the surrounding mountains and directly down into the mill in Shelton. These rail lines were in continual use for over 120 years and became the last privately owned logging railroad in operation in the continental United States. In later years, the company would shift direction, selling the Shelton facility to Sierra Pacific Industries in 2015, so they could focus on other aspects of their business. Sierra Pacific Industries announced upon acquisition that they would not operate the existing mill as is. Instead, they would spend nearly 6 years investing in and bringing the mill into the 21st century with state-of-the-art equipment. Today, the new mill produces 2x4, 2x6, and 2x8 boards at a high speed. The mill is fourth or fifth largest in lumber production in the U.S. and clearly the number one producing sawmill in Washington state. The mill now employs nearly 300 people, and they're looking for more. It appears that Shelton has another innovator on its hands and a bright future with its new partner. And finally, Christmastown, USA. Looks like Shelton has another feather in its cap. The town is renowned for its festive spirit and annual holiday celebrations. After achieving a spot in the Guinness Book of World Records for most lit Christmas trees in a single display, the annual festival would just kick into high gear and includes things like the Festival of Furs, which features a Christmas maze and a bazillion lights and is a favorite for holiday family photos. It includes Holiday Magic, which features fire pits for marshmallow roasting, kiddie train rides, Santa photos and letters, even Christmas karaoke. Next, a gingerbread challenge, a competitive event to determine who can come up with the most creative gingerbread house. Christmastown Market, which features Santa and Mrs. Claus, live music, crafting, and wreath workshops, and tons of local artisans. And the wagon rides, evening tours around the area to see the lights, complete with hot chocolate, cookies, and caroling. Well done, Shelton. Now, it might be tough to feel the spirit of Christmas in late May, but the spirit of Shelton, that appears to be alive and well. You should check it out. As for this trio, one last walk around the park on a beautiful spring day in Shelton. Then pack up and roll out. Climbing into the driver's seat, wondering, where next? I don't know. Out there somewhere?
Turns out, this thing called life comes with a lot of rules. Maybe it's time to break a few. Because you can. No, seriously, you can.